Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Boodaism Q&A. Ask me anything about intentional communities. Um, this is only for the readers of Boodaism, but if you happen to get this forwarded to you by a friend, my name's Dave Booda. I write essays and I live in an intentional community. What is an intentional community, you ask? Well, I'm glad you asked. That's a good question. So we actually, I put out an article that talked about community a week ago, and I got a few questions back from readers. So I'm going to go through all those, but I'm going to start off with kind of a general what is intentional community and give you a distinction that's usually useful. When I say to people I live in a community, most people associate that with a commune, like what was kind of back to the land movements in the 60s, 70s. And there's a lot of similarities to that. There are two main kinds of communities, shared income communities and independent income communities. So a shared income community is kind of what people think of when they think of community, living in community. They think of a commune, they think of a bunch of people together on the same land, and instead of paying rent, everybody works there and we all make cheese or something and sell that cheese, and then that does that. There's a community down in Vista, in the town we are, that is like that. They're a religious community. They're part of something called the 12 Tribes, and they have restaurants called the Yellow Deli, and so they all contribute to that. And then they essentially don't own anything individually. They just that's more of a classic commune. Most communities are not shared income communities and are not like that. And that's also not the kind of community I'm in. The community I'm in is called the Emerald Village, and it's an independent income community, and which is like most of the communities. So independent income means we all make money the way we make money, and we pay rent. I pay a decent amount of rent, and the folks here pay, what you'd probably expect, like market rates for this area. And then that money is, so it's kind of run like a business, but that money is our income. That's essentially how the community works. I think what makes an intentional community a community, or what makes living in community different than like just knowing your neighbors, let's say, is that we have a shared governance. So there's a way that we have to run this place together, and we do something called sociocracy, which is our form of governance, as a way of making decisions. But there are certain things that everybody has to agree on or be cool with, and so how do you get to that place? And that's different than so there's less autonomy in that way, and that's what makes it a community, and that's what makes it challenging, but also what makes it awesome, because you really like tying your boats together. So let's go to the questions. All right. First question is from my friend Jimmy Tomzak. He asks a few questions, and I didn't necessarily go through and take out any redundancies, so I'm just going to go through them, and then if there's a redundancy, I'll just skip over it. First question was how you got involved. So I was with a woman named Paula for 4 years. Back in 2014, we were just looking around and interested in community, and we actually came and took a tour of this place because I asked around and I said, hey, are there any communities here? Or is this, in the San Diego area? And somebody said, yeah, you should check out this place called EVO, which stands for Emerald Village Observatory, or organization, depending on who you ask. And so we took a tour. We had a friend here named Courtney who was living here, and it sounded very permaculture-y. Like Courtney's very into growing and farming, and we were like, that's kind of cool. And so we came out here, and I just kind of had it on my radar. And then in 2018, I was getting 18, was it? No, 17. 2017, I was getting really serious about living in community. I was talking to friends saying, hey, what if we bought some land? What if we did this? What if we did that? And in general, people were interested, but I didn't really find anybody that was like wanting to like take the steps and move their legs and walk toward this thing that was called living in community. And it's not easy, but so I was like, well, why don't I go and and live in one and see what it's like. And since this place is a thing, I happen to know somebody who knew somebody here. So I applied. We had an application at the time. And I lived in this small little room. It was about 8 by 12 room with the door opening in. And kind of made it my own. And it's a beautiful property. It's 9 acres. It was built in the 60s. Not as a community. It was built by this really wealthy couple that lived in LA. And this was like their summer getaway. And so it actually has multiple houses and all sorts of cool stuff. Maybe I'll do a walking tour of it sometime with the video, but let me know if you want me to do that. I will do that sometime. So I came here thinking I'm going to be here for like 6 months and that's it. And I ended up really liking it and just liking the people, especially. I think the 10 founders that are here, that are still living here, are just really excellent people. They're worth getting to know. They're all kind of impressive in their own way. You know, I like that when people, not that people need to be like super rich or successful, but like I think somebody who's impressive, somebody who's done interesting stuff with their life and cultivated skills or wisdom. So I liked it and I stayed, and then about a year in, I bought a tiny house, which, if you got the email I sent about this, there's a link to the tiny house tour. I've since renovated another tiny house, so I have 2, and I'm sitting in the second one right now. This is like my office recording studio space. So I've been here for over 3 years now. Hit 3 years in January. So thanks for your questions. All right, next question. If I would do anything differently, I would have come here sooner. I would have gotten involved in community sooner. It took me like a year to really get how awesome this was. And I'm not saying every community is awesome. Really, every community is very different. But I guess I always had it in that community was something I'd do in the future, and but not now. I'm not ready for it, and I had to start my own community. And but there are a lot of communities out there, and I think this is another question that other folks have asked, so I'll just mention it now. There's a group called FIC, Foundation for Intentional Community, and their website is ic.org, and they have a directory of all the communities that they know of or that have registered with them, and they're really the hub. I mean, there's no other organizations organizing intentional communities. And so you can find stuff. We're on there. Lots of people are on there, and they say, are they accepting new members? How big are they? Is there an application? Was there a link to their website? So there's amazing communities out there, and there's ways to get involved. There's certainly ways to go visit. Things have changed a little bit in COVID world, but hopefully after that's done, you can do a little community tour if you want, or just see if there's ones in your area. I've had so many friends in San Diego want to learn about community, and they don't take the 20-minute drive to come visit us, and I find that ridiculous. And I think there's a lot right under our noses. We don't even realize it. So, do I know anyone else? Any other community I like or look up to or respect and admire? I've become friends with a woman named Diana Leaf Christian, who wrote a book called Creating a Life Together, and other books as well. She's kind of like she's like the intellectual godmother of intentional communities. She's probably in her 70s. She lives at a community called Earth Haven outside of Asheville, North Carolina. And, there's definitely some other great communities. She's mentioned a community up in the Bay Area called OAEC, Occidental Arts and Ecology Center. And, she mentions a lot of communities in her book, which that book is totally worth reading, Creating a Life Together. IC.org, check it out. And there's other communities, and every community has something kind of cool about it, and something that probably, you don't like, So it's nice to visit. Do I know anybody else living in community besides the folks I live in community with? I mean, sort of. There's different, there's different scales of community. I mean, even there's people like living in a big house together, but the way they're kind of coming together and eating together sometimes, or having house meetings is like communal in a sense. But I would say in Southern California, or at least in San Diego, I mean, I know there's some in LA. There's LA Eco Village. But I know, like, yeah, in San Diego, this is kind of the one. There's probably others, but this is maybe the most successful one. That's hard to say, of course. But yeah, so that's what I know. The Emerald Village, that's where we are. Betsy Robbins asked, how does this kind of community get started? Or is it better / easier to join one that's already established? Well, Betsy, I definitely thought before I came here I was going to start one. And the longer I've been here, the more I'm digging this place and the more I'm feeling like, boy, I don't know that I really have to start something. There's, at this point, I have a friend, Misha, who just started a community up in Grass Valley, Nevada City area. He's looking for people, and I have some friends going up to Oregon. They're starting a community. Actually, a few of the people living here are going up to Oregon, starting a community up there. And starting a community is fucking hard. So I don't, I would only want to do that if it made a lot of sense. And joining something that's already been established, especially for someone like me, I'm in a partnership with a wonderful woman, but we don't have any kids or dogs. I have a lot of skills. I have a lot of experience in community. I've got 2 tiny houses, one of which is mobile, one of which really isn't that mobile. But so I can kind of bring my own living situation wherever I go. I'm a good candidate for intentional communities. So yeah, in that way, like it makes more sense for me to join something than go through all the work to start it. And that's what I found. I'm liking this place more and more. So I don't, who knows what the future will hold, but so far so good. Been here for about 3 years. How does this kind of community get started? There was 10 founders here. There still are. And they all got together and they were like, hey, let's raise our kids together. And they just, they found some property. One of the guys was a real estate agent. He found this property and said, hey, let's go in on it. And they did. They've learned a lot over the years. I think they really just kind of jumped in. And like I said, they're really great, impressive people. And I think that's why they succeeded, because it's not easy starting community. But yeah, they didn't really know a ton about intentional community and like studied a lot of it. They just jumped in and figured it out. So Jessica Sparling asks, who owns the property? The property is owned collectively by the 10 founders. They each own 1/10 of it. Do I pay rent? Do I pay in a rent structure that covers things like property taxes? Yes. Actually, about half of our expenses are not the mortgage. So the mortgage would include property taxes and that insurance and that kind of thing. But then we have about double what that is to cover things like utilities. And we have different, the way we do our governance is like we have a bunch of different circles. So like maintenance, land, events, outreach, HR. We have an HD circle, which is our health department. We have these circles, and these circles get funded by the community. So, and we have, emergency funds. We have all sorts of things that require money. So in general, yeah, that's about how things work. And that's all 95% paid by the rental income. Does everybody have a job outside the community? Yes. So nobody actually has a job in the community. Some people spend more time here than others, and some people work from home. Some people do that, but nobody, the community doesn't employ anybody. That's our community, but some communities do. Um, I think we'd like to work toward that. To be honest, there's a few people here that are just super productive when they're here, and we'd love um, to create some ways for them to just be here and work on projects here more, because that would really benefit us. So we're kind of working toward that, but right now the community does not employ anybody. Do I share finances for upkeep? No, like I said, independent income community, so we don't share our finances with each other. We just pay rent, and then the money that the community collects is distributed and by our system of governance. So the groups decide on where the money should go and that kind of thing. What does the age profile look like? Younger people, couples, families, individuals? Yeah, we've got 5 families here. The 10 founders are comprised of 5 couples, and at this point, they all have kids. Youngest kid is 2.5. The oldest one is like 23. So there's 2 kids that have grown that spent like maybe 6 or 7, 8 years here, that moved away, that don't live here anymore because they're, older. And right now we have 7 kids here. We've got 2.5-year-old, 5-year-old, 7-year-old, 9, 10, 11. So, and 14. I think that's 7. So we have 7 kids here. And the couples and the families are probably median age early 40s. So I don't think we have anybody over 50. That's one of the 10 founders anyways. And you said, most importantly, is it fun? Hell yeah, it's fun. I will say more about that because, it is, it's like saying, is a marriage fun? Like, I think the reason we get into relationships is because it can make our life better, and it's also can be a challenge. And so I think in community, sometimes you get higher highs and lower lows. I don't know if I'd say lower lows, but I feel like, yeah, maybe. I think I'm especially suited for intentional communities. That is just something I absolutely love. Probably hopefully came out in that article I wrote about the military and intentional communities. But yeah, like we do things here on the regular, on the weekly things that people might do yearly. We have like these awesome day-long, essentially parties. We get together for someone's birthday, where we have basically dinner parties all the time, kind of spontaneously. In a lot of ways, this, there's a similar thing that people typically only get at like Burning Man or festivals, which is this, sometimes you just go through your day and like time doesn't exist, So I get up in the morning, I walk over to someone's house. Hey, you want some coffee? Oh, sure. Hey, how's life? Oh, life's good. Blah, blah, blah. Somebody else comes over. Oh, you want some breakfast? Oh, let's go over to somebody else's house for breakfast. Okay, great. And then cool, let's work on a project together. Oh, we build a woodshed or something. And oh, let's go and do this. And let's smoke a joint or whatever. And then hang out for dinner. Oh, you want to go? Like, let's watch a movie. Oh, let's watch a movie in the yurt. Okay, great. Put on the projector. And it's like that's very common to have days like that are just, flowing from one cool thing to the next, and, cuddles and conversation and eating together and all that. And in a way, like, that is almost normal here, which I absolutely fucking love. And it is as good as I'm making that sound. But, it's also like there's 15 adults here and you have to get along with all of them. And what if you got beef with one of them? Well, that's a problem. If you have beef with your neighbor down the street, in normal nuclear family world, you can just avoid them. You got beef with someone here, like they're in your face. They're here, we all have separate houses, but like at the same time, like you see the people. And so you have to work that stuff out. So it's both great and also can be more challenging sometimes. All right. This is a question from Elizabeth Nunley, also known as Professor Nunley. She's kind enough to edit a lot of the articles and the essays I write. So if you are the kind of person who's really a stickler about, and if you read stuff and if there's errors, it's hard for you to focus, you can thank her for the essays I write not being full of mistakes. So she asks, are there a lot of different styles of intentional communities, or are you all mostly just gardening, tending, poncho wearing, guitar strumming hippies? I didn't wear my poncho today, I guess, but I have my guitar. So the two styles of intentional communities are what I mentioned before: shared income and independent income. And within that, there's maybe some variations, but that's the main stuff. There's also co-housing, which is under the intentional community world, but is kind of different too. I don't really know a whole lot about co-housing. It's typically more urban. It's typically more like a apartment-ish thing, maybe. Intentional communities, eco-villages tend to be a little more rural. We're out in the countryside. So that's that. But more importantly, are we all mostly just garden tending, poncho wearing, guitar strumming? I wish. I mean, doesn't that sound great? Would you tend your garden wearing your poncho and then you go strum some guitar with a bunch of hippies? Like, I don't know. That sounds pretty great to me. But I've been meaning to, I've spent a lot of time here building, learning how to essentially be a carpenter. And I feel like my next thing is going to be permaculture and gardening. And Vicky, my partner, and I are really getting to that. We're actually looking at doing a permaculture design course and doing some other stuff like that. So we do definitely want to be garden tending. I would like to grow all my own food. I think that would be amazing. We have chickens here. We have about 20, 25 chickens. So we get eggs here. Not enough eggs for everybody, but we get some. I love that lifestyle. I love the slow living. I just bought a wood stove hot tub. It takes like 2 to 4 hours to heat, and I get to chop wood. I'm like thrilled about it. That's going to be an entire evening just making a fire in the hot tub and sitting around under the stars. It's going to be brilliant. So yes, we are mostly garden tending, poncho wearing, guitar strumming hippies. Although one of the founders here, a woman named Bianca Heiming, did a really, really nice TEDx talk, actually at a TEDx conference that I hosted. I didn't know her at the time. And the title of it is great. It said, intentional communities, 50% less hippie than you think, or than most people think, which is a great title because it's kind of true. It's like, we definitely got the hippie element, but also like we're like number crunching accountants, and like, people own guns here, and there's different things, not that hippies don't own guns, but it's you can look that up. TEDx Bianca Heiming, Heyming, intentional communities, 50% less hippie than you think. It's great. It's a great talk. All right. And the last question is Sue from Missouri. For those of us who don't think we'll ever live in a commune or the military or community, what are your suggestions for ways we can get that kind of belonging? What are some other options for coming together for folks that don't want to live together on the same land? I really love this question. I don't think everybody needs to live in community. I think way more people should live in community. I think Sue from Missouri should live in community if she's listening to this. But there are totally ways. I've written actually a bunch about this, like ways to create more intimacy, essentially. But I think so here is my theory, and I've been kicking around an idea about a book on loneliness. And it's going to make a few points, but one point is that we really are lonely because we're not living in community. We're not engaged with community. It doesn't mean we have to be on the same land. We're not engaged. And the thing is, I think we don't account for the need for community into our daily or weekly kind of needs meeting. Needs. You go out and meet these needs. So what I mean is, we do most of us account for the need to drink enough water, let's say, right? We know if we don't drink enough water, you're going to get headache, and it's not good for your health, and that's great. We know we need to eat food. We know we need to kind of get outside once in a while. We know we have sexual needs, we have different things like that. But I think we have community needs that aren't accounted for. And much in the same way that, let's say, okay, sexual needs are a good example. So let's say you were just the kind of person that was like, I don't have any sexual needs. This doesn't apply to me. Who cares? Whatever. I'm going to, and then you kind of just pretended like that wasn't the case. Well, what's probably going to happen is you're going to start to act out in some weird ways, because those needs are going to be there whether you like it or not. And so what'll happen is you'll start like kind of being creepy in some weird ways, or you might find yourself like, impulsively, using porn or different things like in a way that is not healthy. And so if we're not aware, I need to meet my sexual needs, I need to take that seriously, things going to happen. Same is true for community, except I don't think most people realize that they need community. So how to actually meet those needs is really different for everybody. It could be, as simple as just going and actually, meeting your neighbors. That in a lot of parts of the country, that is not strange. In California, it is some ways. In some transient communities, it's kind of, when I growing up on the street I grew up in, I knew every family and their names and their kids, in like a 8-house radius up and down my street, maybe longer. And that was the neighborhood. That was Allen Road, the neighborhood in outside of Boston, and so there's that. I mean, really cultivating deep friendships and with people that really give you energy, that consistently you can show up for each other, and just enjoy each other's company. They feel like peers. But yeah, I think the point I really want to make around this is that the answer looks different for everybody, but it has to be something we take seriously. It can't be something we think we can live without, which is the position I see most people taking. They just assume that it's not a big deal. And I think COVID and the quarantine reality has really highlighted that in a way, because what we've started to realize is that like our default natural life, our rhythms don't meet the community need enough. Like if you live in an apartment by yourself somewhere, like you have to effort to be in community, and yeah, sure, you have like digital options. You can, get together with friends on FaceTime and this and that. But like, I don't have to, the amount of effort I don't have to put into to get my community needs met is amazing. And so it's just easier. And I think we need to set up our lives to make it easy to meet those community needs, whether it's, like I said, getting to know your neighbors, or doing some kind of regular things, or just having other friends that value community as much as you do. So you're not always the one initiating everything. Those are some thoughts. And thanks for asking all the questions. Thanks, Jimmy, Betsy, Jessica, Elizabeth, and Sue. And I hope you guys enjoyed this. If you did, and it feels like, I'm talking to myself. It's been about half an hour here. So I'm starting to think, is anybody still actually watching this? So if you are, let me know, because I would love to hear back from you about, is this useful? And I like answering questions. So if this kind of thing, if you want to do something like this, I have a sense that if we did this again it would be probably on the topic of polyamory and open relationships. That's something I get a lot of questions about and I have a lot of experience with. So, yeah, let me know if these questions and answers, AMAs, are good. I'm happy to do more. All right. Thank you again for listening and for being patrons of my self-indulgent blog and website. All right. Have a great day, you guys.